What is up, you guys? I am Tony Metro, and today I'm going to be telling you every MLB team's biggest need this offseason. So the MLB winter meetings began today, but there really hasn't been a whole lot of news or rumors coming out. The biggest news today was that the Los Angeles Angels acquired relief pitcher Raisel Iglesias from the Cincinnati Reds, but other than that, there has not been a whole lot to report on. So today, I'm going to tell you the biggest need for all 30 MLB teams this offseason. And speaking of those Los Angeles Angels, they're first up on my list. For years, the Angels have neglected starting pitching, and it's always come back to haunt them. And last year, things were the same. They ranked 25th in baseball in team ERA. So without a doubt, the Angels' biggest need this offseason is to acquire starting pitching. Now, the good news is there is plenty of starting pitching on the free agent market this year. From Trevor Bauer to Masahiro Tanaka, James Paxton, and even Jake Odorizzi. In my opinion, the Angels need to go out and get at least two of those guys if the Angels want to field a competitive team during Mike Trout's prime. Next up on the list are the Houston Astros. Last year, the Astros finished 13th in team ERA and 14th in team offense. Unfortunately for the Astros, they may be losing two of their players from their starting lineup to free agency this offseason. Both George Springer and Michael Brantley are free agents this offseason and not expected to re-sign with the team. On top of that, the Astros lost Justin Verlander to injury last year, and with no timetable for his return, they also have some holes in their rotation. This one goes right down the line for me as far as the Astros' biggest need. So I'm going to say that both of those are the two biggest needs for the Astros. They're going to have to find a way to replace Michael Brantley and George Springer, as well as bring in some starting pitching help for the rotation. Moving on to the Oakland Athletics. Last year, the Athletics finished 16th in total offense and 6th in team ERA. But their biggest need by far is going to be replacing shortstop Marcus Semien. Semien is a free agent this year, and it does not look like Oakland has the funds to bring him back. The Athletics, just like the Rays, are so good at producing a sum that is greater than their total parts, so maybe they have something up their sleeve already. But in my opinion, if they were smart, the Athletics should go out and try to replace Semien with a legit starting shortstop. And if Marcus Semien is too far out of the Athletics price range, they should look at other free agents like Didi Gregorius or Andrelton Simmons to replace him. Next on my list are the Texas Rangers. In 2020, the Rangers finished 29th out of 30 teams in total offense. They also happen to have one of the worst pitching staffs in baseball last year, which led to their terrible record. And given the fact that there are holes all over the diamond for them, there are many different ways that the Rangers can approach this offseason. Last year, the Rangers finished dead last in their production from their second baseman, and third to last from their shortstop, Elvis Andrus. So because of that, all of the aforementioned shortstop free agents may be good fits for the Rangers this offseason as well. Rounding out the American League West are the Seattle Mariners. So the Mariners have been on a long rebuild, and it's still going, so they don't want to do anything too crazy. Just like the Rangers, the Mariners also have holes all over the field. But as far as position players go, the Mariners should be focusing on both the outfield as well as third base. Now, again, the Mariners are still in their rebuild, and they don't want to do anything to derail it with a bad long-term contract. But there are definitely some cheap position players that can help them out this year while they keep an eye toward contending in 2022. In the AL Central, we have the Chicago White Sox. The White Sox, emerging from their own rebuild, saw the first glimpse of their future in 2020. Last year, the White Sox finished 5th in total offense and 6th in team ERA. And it was thanks largely in part to that young core that they have assembled. For the White Sox, though, their biggest need this offseason is to retain relief pitcher Alex Colon. Last year, Colon finished with an 0.81 ERA and 12 saves, helping the White Sox lock down the American League Central. And in the 2 seasons before that, Colon finished with a 2.91 ERA while spending time with the White Sox, Rays, and Mariners. At the age of 31, Colon is still a shutdown reliever, and re-signing him should be the White Sox biggest priority this offseason. Moving on to the Cleveland Indians. Last year, the Indians finished 2nd in team ERA, but 24th in total offense. They're now without Mike Clevenger, who they traded to the Padres last season. They didn't pick up the option on relief pitcher Brad Hand, making him a free agent this offseason. And Carlos Santana is also about to enter free agency and may not be returning to the team. All of this without even mentioning that they're likely to trade Francisco Lindor this offseason as well. The Indians' biggest need this offseason is to bolster their offense, and there are a few different ways they could do that. They can improve their catching game by signing a guy like James McCann, or they can improve the outfield. Last year, based on teams' wins above replacement in the outfield, from left to right, the Indians finished 25th, 27th, and 28th in the league. Unfortunately, the Indians are on a budget, making things a little trickier, but maybe Michael Brantley could come at a lower cost and give them some production in the outfield. Next up, the Detroit Tigers. Everything. Last year, the Tigers finished 23rd in total runs and dead last in team ERA. Needless to say, the Tigers are still in a long rebuild, and I do not see any light at the end of the tunnel yet. If there was one specific area that the Tigers could improve, it would be the corner outfield positions. But honestly, the Tigers could use an upgrade on just about any part of their roster. Next up, the Kansas City Royals. Last year, the Royals finished 12th in team ERA and 24th in total offense. They themselves are still rebuilding and waiting for their starting rotation to develop. But in the meantime, they could look to replace left fielder Alex Gordon, who is finally retired from the team. And rounding out the American League Central, the Minnesota Twins. The Twins were supposed to mash their way through games, but they actually finished 18th in total runs scored in 2020. The Twins recently non-tendered Eddie Rosario and will be losing him to free agency this year. Both Nelson Cruz and Jake Odorizzi are free agents and could leave the team as well. The most important thing that the Twins need to do this offseason is to improve the offense in the case that they lose both Nelson Cruz and Rosario. And it may be as simple as, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The Twins could easily re-sign Nelson Cruz and make their lives a whole lot easier. If the Twins don't address these issues, their offense could continue to trend downward heading into 2021. Moving to the American League East, let's start with the New York Yankees. The Yankees are loaded on offense, but one thing that they haven't had in their lineup for a few years now is a strong left-handed bat. Putting their need to re-sign DJ LeMahieu aside, the next biggest thing the Yankees need to accomplish this offseason is to get that left-handed bat. And no one would make more sense for the Yankees than outfielder Michael Brantley. Brantley has spent the last 2 years with the Houston Astros, where he has continued to develop as one of the best left-handed hitting outfielders in all of baseball. And the Yankees can afford to re-sign DJ LeMahieu and bring Brantley aboard and make that a more complete lineup. Next, the Toronto Blue Jays. Last year, the Blue Jays finished 7th in total offense and 17th in team ERA. And now that their young core has finally emerged and they are ready to compete for an AL East title, the Blue Jays are expected to have a very busy offseason. The Blue Jays already signed starting pitcher Robbie Ray and are still looking to add to that starting rotation. It's also been rumored that the Blue Jays have already spoken with George Springer's agent and that they would be interested in bringing him to Toronto. And while the Blue Jays do need to address their starting pitching, I believe that center field is actually the biggest need on this team. In one of my previous videos where I predicted where the top 10 free agents in baseball would land, I predicted that Jackie Bradley Jr. would sign with the Toronto Blue Jays. Whether it's George Springer or Jackie Bradley Jr., either way, it's going to be a massive upgrade over Randall Grichuk in center field. Next, the Tampa Bay Rays. In 2020, the Rays finished with the 3rd best team ERA in baseball and finished 12th in total offense. And for a team that just came 2 wins away from their first World Series title, it may seem like the Rays don't have a lot of things that they need to improve on. But just like the Oakland Athletics, the Rays are balling on a budget. The Rays already let starting pitcher Charlie Morton walk in free agency to the Atlanta Braves. In addition, it's been rumored recently that the Rays are open to listening to offers on starting pitcher Blake Snell. Because of that, the biggest need that the Rays need to focus on is getting starting pitching. They're going to have to find a way to replace Charlie Morton's production, and they may have to do the same for Blake Snell. Next, the Boston Red Sox. The Red Sox pitching staff had an absolutely brutal season, finishing 28th in team ERA. And now with Chaim Bloom entering his 2nd year as GM of the team, they no longer have to worry about the collective bargaining tax threshold that they were up against last year. They still had a pretty solid lineup in 2020, even with the loss of Mookie Betts, but they need to address their starting rotation. With Chris Sale missing all of last year due to injury and Martin Perez dealing with his own issues, the lowest ERA in their rotation was Nate Eovaldi's at 3.74. If the Red Sox want to get back to competing right away, they need to focus on signing starting pitching this offseason. Next, the Baltimore Orioles. The Orioles actually had a pretty surprising 2020, where they finished 16th in team ERA and 16th in total runs scored. But even though the pitching staff did better than expected, it's definitely misleading. In 2020, Alex Cobb, Tommy Milone, and Asher Wojciechowski accounted for 23 of the team's starts. Now, none of those guys are under 32 years old, so they're not long-term solutions for the Orioles. The Orioles are probably not ready to contend yet, but if they wanted to improve their team for 2021, the best thing they could do is add more starting pitching. Thank you guys for watching part 1, where I covered the American League. Later this week, I'll be releasing part 2, where I cover the National League.